He stepped quietly into the forest, expecting the usual calm. Then he saw it, a massive bear staring at him. But the fear in its eyes wasn't of him, it was something deeper, something hidden in the shadows. The forest had a rhythm he knew well, the whisper of wind through pine needles, the distant gurgle of a creek, and the faint rustle of small animals in the underbrush. Tonight, though, it was different. The air was heavy, almost electric, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. He tightened his jacket against the chill, feeling the coarse fabric resist his movements. Every step he took pressed into the damp earth, muffled by the fallen leaves. He wasn't alone, and he could sense it before he even saw it. A sudden snapping of a twig made him freeze. His flashlight cut a narrow cone of light across the forest floor, revealing the familiar shapes of moss-covered roots and scattered branches. And then he saw it, a massive bear, standing on all fours just 20 feet away. Its fur was dark, matted with the remnants of autumn rain, and its eyes, reflecting the flashlight's beam, were wide and alert. But there was something unusual in that gaze. He had spent years tracking wildlife, yet he had never seen a bear look terrified. The bear didn't move toward him. It didn't growl or bare its teeth. Instead, it held its position, ears pinned slightly back, muscles tense as if it were ready to flee at any moment. The forest seemed to shrink around them, every sound amplified, the soft drip of water from a nearby branch, the distant crack of a falling pine cone, even the rhythmic thump of his own heartbeat. He took a careful step back, trying not to startle the animal, and immediately regretted it. The bear's eyes shifted, not on him, but to the shadows behind him. He swallowed hard. "Hey, easy," he whispered, though his voice trembled more than he intended. His mind raced. Bears were formidable predators, yet here it was, hesitant, alert to something else entirely. What could provoke fear in such a creature? His thoughts scrambled through possibilities, another predator, human hunters, or something unnatural in the forest. He didn't like the options. The bear moved cautiously, not toward him, but along a narrow ridge, keeping its gaze fixed on a cluster of dense brush. Its movements were deliberate, careful, almost unnatural for such a powerful animal. He crouched slightly, lowering himself to the forest floor as he tried to follow without drawing attention. Every rustle, every snap of a twig heightened the tension. He had been in dangerous situations before, but this was different. The forest felt alive, and the bear was its messenger, alerting him to something he couldn't yet see. Minutes passed, but each one stretched endlessly. The bear sniffed the air, nostrils flaring, then paused as if frozen by some unseen force. The man's flashlight trembled in his grip, catching on the damp leaves and fallen branches, casting fleeting shadows that flickered like ghosts. Something moved in the darkness, just beyond the light's reach, a subtle shift, a faint, almost imperceptible motion. The bear stiffened, eyes locking onto it, and he realized that whatever had captured its attention was neither small nor harmless. He whispered again, softer this time, almost to himself, "What are you seeing?" The forest offered no answer, only the echo of wind through the trees and the occasional distant call of an owl. His pulse hammered in his ears. He knew enough about bears to understand that they rarely show fear, and yet this one was rigid with it. The realization settled cold in his stomach. If the bear was afraid, he might have no chance if whatever lurked beyond the shadows decided to reveal itself. The bear lowered its head slightly, sniffing the air, then let out a low, almost imperceptible growl, not at him, but in warning. The man froze, scanning the darkness. Between two massive oaks, a shadow moved. It was large, bulky, and slow, but deliberate, creeping just beyond the tree line. He strained his eyes, trying to pierce the gloom, but the forest seemed to absorb light, swallowing shapes and outlines, leaving only a vague sense of mass and movement. A cold sweat ran down his neck. The bear shifted, taking a cautious step closer to him, then abruptly spun, huffing loudly as it backed away, ears flat. The man instinctively moved with it, unsure whether to run or stay. Then he heard it, a low, guttural growl unlike anything he'd heard in the wild before. It wasn't the bear. It was deeper, more menacing, reverberating through the soil and into his chest. The bear froze again, nostrils flaring, eyes wide with terror, all focus on the same shadowed figure. The man's mind raced. Whatever was out there wasn't small, wasn't alone, and clearly wasn't afraid of him. He felt a shiver run down his spine. The bear wasn't a threat, not yet, but the thing behind it, it was a different story. He reached slowly for his radio, hand trembling. "Base, you need to hear this, something's here," his voice cracked, carried off by the night. And then, before he could speak again, the shadow moved with sudden speed, disappearing between the trees. The bear let out a startled snort and bolted, not toward him, but deeper into the forest, still fixated on the unseen threat. The man froze, chest tight, realizing he was alone with only his flashlight and the echo of the bear's panic. Whatever had frightened the bear so completely was still out there, watching, waiting, and now aware of him. He took a cautious step forward, peering into the darkness, every instinct screaming to retreat. Yet curiosity, and a creeping sense of dread, kept him rooted. The forest seemed to close in around him, the shadows thickening, the silence pressing, heavy and suffocating. He could feel eyes on him, and not just from the bear. Something bigger was out there, something patient, something calculating. Then he saw it, a faint shimmer of movement near the ridge where the bear had fled. Something low to the ground, yet immense. His stomach dropped. And at that precise moment, he heard the first sound, a deliberate, scraping noise, slow and measured, moving closer. The bear's fear had been a warning. Now he understood, he wasn't just witnessing a terrified animal. He was standing on the edge of something far more dangerous, and it was coming straight for him. He lifted his flashlight, hands shaking, heart hammering, and the shadow stepped into the weak beam of light, revealing something he could never have anticipated. The shadow lingered in the beam of his flashlight for a heartbeat, then vanished as if it had never been there. The man's pulse raced. Every instinct screamed to retreat, yet the forest had closed around him. The trees, now silhouettes against the dimming sky, seemed almost alive, shifting slightly with the wind. But the movement was deliberate, purposeful, not natural. He tightened his grip on the flashlight, knuckles white, feeling the coarse leather of his jacket strain under the tension in his shoulders. The bear's earlier panic replayed in his mind. Its fear had been pure, primal, an instinct honed over centuries. If it had reacted this way, whatever was in the shadows had to be enormous, dangerous, and fully aware of its presence. The man took a slow, measured step back, aware that even the faintest rustle of leaves could draw attention. Then he froze, a low, guttural sound echoed through the trees. It wasn't a growl from the bear, it was deeper, almost deliberate, vibrating through the earth beneath him. His stomach sank. He crouched lower, trying to stay partially hidden behind a moss-covered log. His breath came in shallow bursts. He scanned the area, the flashlight cutting jagged lines through the mist. The bear had disappeared, leaving only footprints pressed into the damp earth. Those prints were fresh, huge, clawed, and spaced with the confident stride of an apex predator. The realization sent another shiver down his spine. The bear had fled for a reason. He now understood that it wasn't fear of him, it was fear of something far more dangerous. A sudden rustle to his left made him snap the flashlight beam in that direction. A pair of glowing eyes stared back at him, low to the ground. He froze, heart hammering, and the hairs on his neck rose. Then the eyes darted away, retreating into the underbrush. Whatever it was watching him, patient and calculating. The forest had transformed from familiar wilderness into a trap of shadows and unseen dangers. Every instinct told him to move, to run, but he knew that panic could be deadly. The man tried to think logically. Whatever had terrified the bear was intelligent, aware, and possibly hunting. He had to assess, understand, and, if possible, avoid it. His mind raced through wildlife behaviors, predator habits, and the limited options he had. Flashlight in one hand, radio in the other, he moved cautiously along a narrow trail, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. Every footstep pressed lightly into the forest floor, but even that sounded like a roar in the thick silence. Then he saw signs. Deep claw marks on the bark of a massive oak tree. Broken branches, almost deliberately arranged, as if the forest itself had been shaped to create a warning. And then the smell hit him, a pungent, musky odor, far stronger than any bear scent. It was the odor of something older, wilder, and infinitely more dangerous. His stomach twisted. The bear's fear wasn't just instinct, it had been a warning encoded in every fiber of its being. He paused, scanning the area. The shadows stretched and shifted unnaturally, the forest alive with anticipation. Then, suddenly, a low snapping sound echoed behind him. He spun, flashlight trembling in his hands, and caught a glimpse of movement, a large mass, not fully visible, slipping between trees. His heart raced. He was being watched, and now it was closer than ever. The bear's earlier presence returned in his mind, and he realized something important. The animal had been trying to lead him, not away from danger, but toward awareness. Its panic had been a guide. Every step it had taken, every tense pause, was a message. He had ignored it at first, thinking it would flee and leave him alone, but now he understood. The forest was a stage, and he was in the middle of a drama that had been unfolding without human interference. A faint movement caught his eye, a shadow gliding across the forest floor. His pulse jumped. The flashlight's beam sliced through the mist, revealing a massive paw print, far larger than the bear's, pressed into the wet earth. The edges were sharp, deep, as if the creature had weight and precision. He crouched lower, tracing the trail with his eyes, heart thudding painfully in his chest. This was no ordinary predator. This was something else entirely. Then he heard it, a breath, low and deliberate, coming from the underbrush. The hairs on his arms stood on end. He could feel the presence moving around him, circling, analyzing. The forest had become alive with tension, every tree a potential threat, every shadow a possible attack. The bear's fear replayed in his mind, and he realized that he had underestimated the gravity of the situation. It wasn't just a forest encounter, it was a confrontation with something far older and more cunning than he could imagine. Suddenly, a branch snapped directly behind him. He whipped around, flashlight beam cutting into the darkness, but saw nothing, only the shifting shadows and the faint outline of trees. Then he noticed a trail of broken leaves leading away, faint but deliberate, almost like a path laid by the unseen creature. His stomach tightened. The forest wasn't random. It was orchestrated, every sound, every shadow, every subtle movement designed to provoke fear and test vigilance. He tried to recall his training, every survival tip, every tracking method. Nothing could prepare him for this. The bear had fled for a reason. He had no idea what he was facing, only that it was intelligent, aware, and potentially lethal. Yet, despite the fear, a part of him remained curious. What could have struck terror into a creature that had dominated this forest for years? He felt a pull, a mixture of dread and fascination, that kept him rooted even as the tension threatened to overwhelm him. The forest seemed to shift again, the shadows moving as if alive. And then he heard it, a low, guttural rumble, followed by a faint scraping noise, moving closer and closer. He spun toward the sound, flashlight trembling. The air grew thick, heavy, almost suffocating. He could feel the presence, massive and deliberate, circling him like a predator testing its prey. And then he froze. In the dim beam of light, just beyond a tangle of roots and fallen leaves, he saw it, a hulking silhouette, broad and massive, its outline barely visible in the mist. The bear had been right. Whatever this was, it was terrifying, and it was watching him with intention. He took a step back, heart hammering, and the silhouette shifted slightly, revealing a glint of eyes that were not entirely animal, and then it moved toward him with silent, predatory precision. The silhouette shifted again, slow and deliberate, merging with the mist and shadows. His flashlight trembled in his grip as he raised it, trying to illuminate the figure, but the fog diffused the beam, giving the shape an almost spectral quality. Heart hammering, he took a tentative step backward, mindful of the uneven forest floor beneath him. Every leaf and branch underfoot seemed to crackle with danger. The bear's panic flashed through his mind again. Its flight had been a warning, an instinctual response to something it had known, something he was only now beginning to grasp. The forest had been a stage, and now the main actor had stepped into the light, albeit shrouded in mist. He swallowed hard, feeling the dry scrape of adrenaline in his throat, and forced himself to focus. Whatever it was, it had weight, presence, and intelligence. A low, guttural growl rolled through the air, not quite animal, not quite human, but resonant, as if testing boundaries. His pulse spiked. He scanned the surrounding trees, trying to discern movement in the fog. Something shifted behind a thick cluster of pines, large enough to bend branches with its mass. He held his breath. Even the forest seemed to pause, the usual night sounds muted under the weight of what was stalking him. Then he noticed a faint set of prints near the ridge, a second set, enormous and clawed, like nothing he had seen before. The spacing between the prints was deliberate, careful, as if the creature moved with intention, choosing its path. He crouched lower, studying the patterns in the mud, realizing that the bear had been trailing the same path, fleeing from the same predator. Fear coiled tightly in his stomach. He had stumbled into something beyond ordinary wildlife, beyond any bear encounter he had experienced. A rustle behind him made him whip around. Nothing. Just shadows. But the instinctual warning in the air was undeniable. Whatever had terrified the bear was patient, calculating, and aware of him now. His flashlight flickered slightly as his hands shook, amplifying the shadows into threatening shapes. The forest had become a labyrinth, a trap filled with unseen watchers. Then he heard it, a sharp crack of a branch, deliberate, close. His chest tightened. The silhouette moved again, merging briefly with a fallen log, its mass heavy and controlled. He forced himself to breathe slowly, trying to mask his fear. The creature wasn't moving randomly, it was circling, assessing, choosing a moment. The bear had been right, whatever he faced was something to be feared. He scanned the forest floor, looking for another sign, and there it was, a deep gouge in a fallen tree trunk, claw marks almost perfectly etched into the wood. The precision struck him. The creature had strength, but it also had intention. This wasn't an accident, it was a message. And now he felt it keenly. The forest was alive, aware, and watching him as much as it had watched the bear. A movement in the fog made him freeze. A large paw, massive and shadowed, slid across a fallen branch. The bear had vanished, but its earlier fear now became his own. The creature was close, closer than he dared imagine. Every instinct screamed that he shouldn't remain, yet curiosity and necessity anchored him in place. He knew that running without awareness would be fatal. Then, from somewhere deeper in the mist, a low rumble rolled out, vibrating through the trees. The sound was deliberate, controlled, almost communicative. The bear had reacted similarly. Its warning instinct was correct. Something in the forest had authority over the predator, a presence that demanded caution. He clenched his flashlight, scanning the shadows, and suddenly realized the creature was moving again, closing distance without sound, almost gliding through the fog. A cold gust of wind swept through, carrying the earthy scent of damp moss, mud, and the unmistakable musk of something large. His stomach tightened. Whatever this creature was, it had adapted to the forest completely, blending strength, intelligence, and instinct. The bear had recognized it immediately. He hadn't. Not yet. He paused near a thick stand of pines, pressing his back against a rough trunk. Every sound, branch snapping, leaf rustling, distant water, was amplified. Then he heard it, a deliberate, heavy exhale, measured, and then silence. He could feel eyes on him, watching, judging, waiting. The forest seemed to close in, the mist thickening, shadows deepening. And yet, in the midst of fear, he noticed something else, tracks, faint but consistent, leading upward toward a ridge. The bear had fled along this path. Perhaps he should follow. Another snap behind him made him spin, heart hammering. For a moment, the flashlight illuminated the bear's dark fur, crouched low, not aggressive, but alert. Its gaze was fixed beyond him, toward the source of the earlier threat. The bear had returned, almost as if guiding him or testing him. He understood immediately. Its behavior wasn't just fear, it was a signal. Whatever had frightened it was still present, and now it was aware of both of them. Then he heard it, a sound that froze him in place. It was not growling, not snapping, not rustling, but a low, resonant rumble, carrying authority through the forest. The mist seemed to vibrate with it. The bear tensed further, ears flat, muscles coiled. It shifted slightly toward him, and he realized it was almost protective, positioning itself between him and the unseen threat. Fear and awe collided in his chest. This was no ordinary encounter. He had never witnessed a bear display this level of instinctive defense. The forest fell silent, the tension palpable. The man knew that whatever was out there was calculating, assessing him. Every instinct told him to retreat, but he couldn't. He had to know. Every step forward was deliberate, careful. Each movement measured, each breath controlled. The mist swirled around him, and he realized the forest had become a stage for a confrontation far larger than himself. And then, suddenly, the silhouette reappeared, partially visible through the fog, massive, hulking, watching. The bear's fur bristled, and it growled softly, not at him, but as a warning. The man's pulse surged. He could feel the weight of the unseen predator's gaze, every muscle coiled for action. The bear's fear was no longer just instinct, it was communication. The silhouette shifted suddenly, and for the first time, he saw movement that wasn't natural, too calculated, too deliberate. The forest around him seemed to hold its breath as the unseen presence stepped into partial view, and this time, he realized it wasn't alone. The fog thickened, curling around gnarled tree trunks and fallen branches, as if the forest itself were conspiring to conceal the truth. Every sound was amplified, the distant drip of water from leaves, the soft shuffle of unseen feet across moss, even his own ragged breathing. He gripped the flashlight with both hands, illuminating the shadows but revealing only fragments of the scene. The bear remained close, low to the ground, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond him, its entire body taut with tension. Then he noticed it, the faint outline of a second mass moving alongside the first silhouette. Two enormous shapes, blending seamlessly into the mist, circled the ridge. The bear's fur bristled, and it let out a low, warning growl, not at him, but directed toward the intruders. The man's heart hammered in his chest. His pulse raced, each beat echoing in his ears as adrenaline surged through his veins. The realization hit hard, whatever had terrified the bear before wasn't just one creature, it was at least two. He crouched lower behind a thick pine, flashlight beam trembling. The massive silhouettes moved with surprising coordination, silent yet deliberate, each step calculated. His eyes followed the largest figure, noting broad shoulders and massive limbs that flexed with restrained power. This wasn't ordinary wildlife. This was something that had learned, adapted, and hunted. The bear's instinctive fear made perfect sense now. A low, guttural rumble emerged from the shadows, reverberating through the forest floor. It was closer, unmistakably aware of his presence. The bear tensed even further, shifting subtly between him and the threat. It wasn't aggression the bear felt, it was a protective instinct. It had assessed him as part of the immediate environment, someone potentially in danger from the predator's presence. He realized with a shock that the bear might be trying to guide him, to shield him from whatever was moving in the fog. He inched forward, careful to keep his steps light, trying to get a better view without drawing attention. The forest seemed to tighten around him, every shadow dancing with life. Then he saw it, a massive paw, pressed against a mossy rock, flexing as if preparing to spring. Its claws were enormous, jagged, and far beyond anything he'd imagined possible. He swallowed hard, the taste of fear bitter on his tongue. The bear let out a startled snort and shifted slightly, placing itself more directly between him and the creature. Suddenly, the mist parted just enough for him to glimpse the creature's faces. Eyes glimmering with intelligence, awareness, and something almost human in their calculation. The bear had been right, these weren't ordinary animals. Their size alone was intimidating, but it was the intent in their gaze that froze him. They were studying him, assessing whether he was prey, threat, or collateral. He whispered under his breath, almost inaudible, "What are you?" The answer came not in words, but in movement. One of the silhouettes stepped closer, deliberately, with a patience that made his skin crawl. The forest felt heavier, as if the mist itself were pressing down to obscure his senses. The bear growled again, a deep, vibrating sound that seemed to echo off the tree trunks. It wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. It was warning enough. The man's flashlight flickered, casting long, distorted shadows. In that brief strobe, he caught a glimpse of claw marks on a nearby tree trunk, deep, deliberate, almost ritualistic. Whatever these creatures were, they moved with purpose, leaving signs not only of presence but of message. His stomach twisted. The bear had reacted to these marks instinctively. He now understood why. Then came another sound, a scraping, deliberate, close. The man froze. The bear shifted its weight, growling low in its throat, eyes locked on the approaching shadows. His hands trembled as he gripped the flashlight tighter. He could feel the forest holding its breath, every tree and branch suspended in tense anticipation. The creatures weren't just moving, they were communicating silently, coordinating. A gust of wind swept through, carrying the heavy musk of damp earth, moss, and the unmistakable scent of predator. The man's chest tightened. He realized the bear had not fled because of him. It had fled because it knew the intelligence and danger of these creatures, something he had yet to comprehend fully. And now, standing in the forest with only the flashlight and the bear as guide, he felt the weight of vulnerability pressing down. Suddenly, one of the massive silhouettes stepped fully into the beam. Its eyes glimmered, reflecting the faint light, and for a moment the man saw intent so clear, so aware, that it felt like a confrontation of minds. The bear growled sharply, stepping closer, nuzzling slightly against him, not aggressively, but in a protective, reassuring gesture. His heart surged with a strange mix of fear and connection. The creatures paused, almost in synchronization. Their presence was oppressive, yet mesmerizing. The man could feel the bear's body tensing, a living shield. Then, as if sensing the man's hesitation, one of the silhouettes shifted its gaze toward the ridge above. The forest seemed to ripple with anticipation. The man's breath caught. He understood in an instant, the bear's fear had been a warning. These creatures weren't hunting him, yet. But they were aware, calculating, and waiting. He took a careful step forward, flashlight sweeping across the ridge, and saw the remnants of old signs, broken branches, clawed bark, footprints that dwarfed even the bear's. The scale and precision suggested intelligence, strength, and dominance. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his shaking hands. His heart hammered. The bear pressed closer, growling softly, as if reinforcing the silent message, "Be careful." Then he saw movement, a third shadow, smaller, but equally deliberate, stepping between the other two. The creatures weren't acting alone. They were organized, communicating, and displaying a hierarchy he couldn't yet understand. The bear's hackles raised again. Its growl deepened, vibrating through his chest. He realized that the bear's fear had been far more than instinct. It had recognized the threat, calculated its odds, and acted accordingly. And now, with the creatures surrounding him in partial view, he understood the full gravity of the situation. He was in a forest that belonged to them, not him. The bear pressed even closer, growling low, and one of the massive shadows stepped fully into the dim light, revealing a shape that made the man stumble back, heart in his throat, as he realized this wasn't just a forest predator. It was something far older, far more intelligent, and it was fully aware of him. The forest felt heavier with every step he took. Mist curled around twisted roots and fallen branches, making the trees appear alive, almost sentient. His flashlight beam trembled as he focused on the massive silhouettes still partially shrouded in shadow. Their sheer size and deliberate movements had already shattered his sense of normalcy, but now a creeping understanding began to take root. The bear's fear wasn't random, it was a warning of something far older, far more dangerous than anything he had ever encountered in the wild. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his racing pulse. The bear, still crouched low beside him, pressed slightly against his leg, a subtle, protective gesture. Its eyes were wide, glistening in the dim light, flicking repeatedly toward the shadows. The man realized in that instant that the animal wasn't thinking of escape. It was communicating with him through instinct, guiding him, and conveying urgency that transcended words. Then the twist revealed itself. One of the massive silhouettes moved closer, and for the first time, the beam of his flashlight caught its face, partially. The features were unlike any bear, wolf, or known forest predator. Its eyes glimmered with intelligence that was almost human, and its posture, though quadrupedal, carried a deliberate awareness. The man's stomach turned as he processed the impossible truth: these weren't ordinary creatures. They were something older, survivors of a line that had learned to dominate the forest, yet somehow existed outside the natural hierarchy he knew. The bear growled low, pressing against him, ears flat, muscles tense. Its fear had been genuine, primal, but not irrational. It had recognized this anomaly long before he had, and now the forest itself seemed to acknowledge their presence. Every shadow flickered with life, every breeze carried a subtle warning, every rustle in the underbrush seemed a whisper of caution. Then a low, deliberate rumble emanated from the largest of the silhouettes, vibrating through the ground. The man's knees buckled slightly as he tried to process what he was seeing. Its eyes fixed directly on him. The bear stiffened beside him, a living shield, growling softly, as if saying, "Do not provoke it." The man understood then that he was not in control. He never had been. He took a tentative step backward, careful not to draw attention. His mind raced. How could he survive, or even comprehend, the creatures that had frightened the bear so completely? Every instinct screamed to retreat, but the forest's oppressive weight pinned him in place. The shadows twisted as if alive, moving with precision, patience, and intent. The bear's panic, once baffling, now made terrifying sense. It had been aware of a threat beyond anything human comprehension. A second silhouette moved, circling closer to the ridge where he had first seen the bear. Its movements were coordinated, deliberate, almost ritualistic. He noticed marks on trees, clawed and deliberate, as if communicating boundaries. The bear growled again, a soft, warning vibration that echoed through the mist. The man could feel the intelligence of the predator, an intelligence that had outmatched every survival instinct he had ever known. He whispered, barely audible, "Why is it afraid?" The bear nuzzled his leg briefly, its own trembling subtle but unmistakable. And then he saw it, a faint shimmer behind the massive silhouettes, subtle but deliberate, a hidden presence, moving silently. His mind reeled. The bear had been right all along. It wasn't him that posed the danger, nor the bear, it was something else entirely, something ancient, something aware. The largest silhouette shifted fully into the beam of his flashlight. For a fleeting moment, the mist parted, revealing glimmering eyes, elongated limbs, and movements precise enough to be calculated. The bear's low growl deepened, and he realized the protective instinct had shifted into urgent warning. The creature wasn't merely aware of him, it had decided his presence mattered. And that decision was not necessarily benevolent. A scraping noise came from behind the man. He spun, heart hammering, and glimpsed the bear watching, unyielding, growling low as it positioned itself between him and the unseen threat. Another silhouette emerged from the fog, smaller, but equally deliberate, almost mirroring the movements of the first. The forest felt alive with anticipation, every shadow a potential threat. He understood in that moment that he had stumbled into an ecosystem of predators unlike anything human eyes had catalogued. Then came the revelation that shattered any remaining sense of safety. One of the silhouettes stepped closer, pausing deliberately. Its posture, its gaze, the precision of its movement, it was studying not him, but the bear. It was testing boundaries, asserting dominance, and his chest tightened. The bear had fled initially not out of panic, but out of respect, fear, and an instinctual understanding of hierarchy. The man had misread the situation entirely. He pressed back, keeping flashlight beam fixed on the shadows. His legs shook under the weight of adrenaline and awe. The bear growled softly, nudging him again, as if reinforcing a silent message: pay attention. Learn. Every rustle, every sound, every flicker of movement carried meaning. The creatures had been here long before humans intruded. They had adapted, survived, and evolved intelligence that surpassed instinct. Suddenly, the mist parted slightly, revealing the ridge above. The largest silhouette paused, and in that brief moment, he caught a glimpse of glinting eyes reflecting in the low light. The bear tensed beside him, muscles coiled, ears pinned flat. His stomach lurched. The creature's gaze wasn't random, it was deliberate, aware, and calculating. A soft, almost imperceptible growl emerged, vibrating through the forest floor. The bear stepped closer, pressing itself protectively against him. He realized the truth: the bear had not fled out of fear alone. It had fled out of instinctive knowledge of danger, understanding that these creatures, these ancient, intelligent predators, posed a threat beyond any ordinary forest hazard. His mind reeled. Survival, understanding, and trust had converged into a single, overwhelming realization. The bear was not the adversary. It was his ally, his guide, and the only living being in this forest that comprehended the magnitude of the threat. And the creatures were watching, waiting, evaluating. As the largest silhouette stepped fully into the light, the man froze, heart hammering. Its eyes glimmered with intelligence, intent, and a purpose that made every instinct scream. This encounter would change everything he thought he knew about the forest, the bear, and the line between predator and prey. The forest seemed to hold its breath, every shadow frozen, every rustle suspended in time. The man crouched low, flashlight trembling in his hands, sweat running down his temple. The bear remained close, pressed protectively against him, low growls vibrating through its chest. The massive silhouettes lingered, partially obscured by mist, eyes glimmering with intelligence and intent. He realized that the creature's awareness was deliberate. It was observing, analyzing, weighing every movement, and calculating the potential threat he posed. He tried to steady his breathing, but the air was thick, heavy with tension. Every instinct screamed to move, to flee, but experience and caution told him that rash action could provoke disaster. The bear's presence beside him was a steadying force. Its fur bristled, muscles coiled like a spring ready to react, eyes never leaving the silhouettes. He understood in that moment that the bear was not just a companion, it was a guide, communicating through instinct, providing protection where human knowledge failed. A snapping branch behind him made him jump. The bear growled sharply, turning slightly, and he caught a glimpse of movement, a smaller shadow slipping through the mist. The creature's coordination was precise. It moved with purpose, silently, deliberately, ensuring every approach was calculated. The man felt a cold weight in his stomach. These weren't random predators. They were intelligent, evolved, and aware of hierarchy. He whispered under his breath, almost to himself, "What do I do now?" The bear nudged him gently with its nose, not in aggression, but as if urging him to trust instinct over fear. The realization hit hard. He had entered a world where instinct, intelligence, and survival were intertwined, and human logic alone could not dictate outcomes. Every decision now carried weight. Every misstep could be fatal. The largest silhouette shifted, moving slightly closer, revealing more of its massive frame. Its eyes locked onto his, unblinking, and he felt a profound awareness radiate from it. The bear's low growl deepened, reverberating through his chest, and he realized that the animal was communicating something beyond simple warning, a need to choose carefully, to act with respect for the rules of this forest hierarchy. A sudden rustle to the left drew his attention. Another silhouette emerged, slightly smaller, moving in tandem with the first. Their movements were synchronized, deliberate, almost ritualistic. The bear pressed closer to him, nuzzling his leg gently, reinforcing the silent communication, "Do not panic. Observe. Trust." He felt a surge of adrenaline and awe, recognizing the bond forming between him and the bear, a partnership forged in the crucible of fear and instinct. The man weighed his options. Retreat could provoke a chase. Staying put might invite confrontation. Advancing could demonstrate threat or curiosity. Every instinct told him to freeze, yet every fiber of his being urged careful observation. He chose to crouch lower, shifting slightly to keep his flashlight beam steady on the silhouettes while remaining partially concealed behind a moss-covered log. The mist swirled around him, thickening with each breath. He noticed claw marks etched deeply into the surrounding trees, clear signs of strength, control, and territorial awareness. The bear's fur bristled as the largest silhouette paused, sniffing the air deliberately. Its eyes narrowed slightly, intelligent and calculating. The man's chest tightened. The bear had been right all along. Its instincts had been the only reliable guide through this labyrinth of shadows, mist, and unspoken threats. A faint rumble emanated from the silhouettes, vibrating through the forest floor. The bear pressed closer, low growl resonating through the mist. The man realized that the creatures were communicating not only with each other but with him, through the bear's interpretation of their presence. The forest had become a language of tension, instinct, and observation, and he was learning to read it in real time. He shifted slightly, careful not to make noise, trying to discern the direction of movement. One silhouette stepped fully into the flashlight beam, massive form illuminated in stark contrast against the fog. Its eyes glimmered, reflecting intelligence and awareness that surpassed human understanding. The bear growled again, nudging him gently, reminding him of his place in this encounter. Then he noticed something startling. The silhouettes were not advancing aggressively, they were hesitant, deliberate, and almost ceremonial in their movements. The bear's growl shifted in tone, less urgent and more cautionary, as if guiding him to interpret the actions of the creatures correctly. He realized that the bear was not merely scared, it was observing, interpreting, and acting as a bridge between human perception and the intelligence of the unknown predators. The man's mind raced. Every instinct screamed danger, but the bear's guidance suggested observation over confrontation. He crouched lower, keeping flashlight steady, heart hammering, as the largest silhouette shifted again. Its posture was deliberate, calculated, and its gaze locked onto the bear. A silent communication passed between them, a recognition of hierarchy and awareness. The man felt awe and fear in equal measure. Suddenly, the mist parted slightly, revealing the ridge above. The smaller silhouette paused, and in that moment, he caught a glimpse of glinting eyes reflecting in the dim light. The bear stiffened beside him, muscles coiled, growling softly. The creature's gaze was deliberate, calculated, and intelligent, studying him indirectly through the bear. The forest itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. He understood then, the bear's fear had been guidance, not panic. It had led him to observe, learn, and respect the rules of this unseen hierarchy. The silhouettes were not mindless predators, they were intelligent, aware, and capable of assessing both him and the bear. His survival depended on understanding their behavior, interpreting signals, and moving with intention rather than instinctive panic. A low, guttural rumble echoed through the forest, vibrating through roots, rocks, and mist. The bear pressed even closer, low growl vibrating through its chest, eyes locked on the shadows. The man's pulse surged. He realized that every moment, every observation, every cautious movement mattered. He was learning a language written in instinct, shadow, and tension, and the bear was his interpreter. As the largest silhouette stepped fully into the dim beam of light, the man froze, heart hammering. Its eyes glimmered with intelligence and intent, and the bear growled low, a sound that resonated not with fear, but with a deep understanding. The encounter was about to change everything. The forest seemed suspended in time, every rustle and shadow magnified by the mist that clung to the trees and undergrowth. The man's flashlight beam trembled in his hands, illuminating only fragments of the massive silhouettes as they moved deliberately through the fog. His heart pounded so hard it felt as if it would burst through his chest. The bear stayed pressed against him, low growls vibrating through its chest, muscles taut, eyes scanning the shadows with unerring focus. Then it happened. One of the massive silhouettes stepped fully into the beam. The light caught its eyes, glinting with intelligence and intent. The man froze. He could see the intricate coordination between the silhouettes. They moved like a pack, synchronized in their circling, communicating silently through posture and micro-movements. Every instinct screamed that a misstep could provoke aggression, yet the bear remained calm, its growl a steadying force rather than a warning. The bear nudged him slightly, urging him to stay low, to observe rather than react. The man realized the full significance of this gesture. The bear wasn't just protecting him. It was interpreting the intentions of the unseen predators, offering guidance in a language written in instinct and tension. He exhaled slowly, trying to steady his racing heart, as the silhouettes paused a few meters ahead, evaluating. A low, deliberate rumble emerged from the largest silhouette. It was not aggression, not threat, it was communication, a signal, a test. The man's pulse quickened as he watched the bear respond, muscles tensing, eyes narrowing. He understood then that he was witnessing a silent dialogue between species, a primal intelligence operating at the limits of comprehension. The forest itself seemed to lean in, holding its breath as if aware of the fragile balance between curiosity, survival, and respect. Suddenly, a sharp movement to his left drew his attention. The second silhouette lunged briefly, not at him, but toward the ridge above, disrupting a pile of leaves and debris. The bear growled, low and resonant, positioning itself between him and the disturbance. The man's stomach tightened. He understood instinctively that the bear had assessed the threat and was now actively managing the situation. It was a protector, a mediator, and an interpreter, all rolled into one. The bear's eyes flicked to him, and he caught the silent command, "Stay low, move slowly, do not provoke." He obeyed, shifting slightly to remain concealed while keeping the flashlight trained on the silhouettes. Their size was imposing, their coordination remarkable. He could see the curve of massive claws, the taut muscles beneath fur, and the intelligence in their movements, methodical, deliberate, patient. They were not mindless predators. They were calculating, evolved, aware. Then came the first truly unsettling moment. One silhouette stepped closer to the bear, pausing just beyond its reach. The bear did not move backward. Instead, it lowered itself slightly, maintaining eye contact, growling softly, its posture both defensive and communicative. The man's heart raced. He had never witnessed such a display of instinctual intelligence. The bear and the silhouettes were negotiating, testing boundaries in a language he barely understood. A gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying the musky scent of predator and forest decay. The man shivered but stayed still, trusting the bear's guidance. Another rumble came from the ridge, this one softer, almost contemplative. The bear's growl matched the rhythm, a response in kind. The man realized he was observing a conversation conducted entirely in presence, posture, and subtle sound. Then the twist fully revealed itself. One of the silhouettes made a deliberate move toward the man, stepping into the flashlight beam. Its eyes met his for the first time, intelligent, aware, assessing. Fear surged through him, yet he felt a strange calm in the bear's continued presence. The animal's low growl was not only protective but reassuring, a tether in a world suddenly alien and threatening. The bear shifted slightly, brushing against him, reinforcing a silent command: trust, observe, and survive. The man realized that this encounter was not random. The creatures had evaluated the bear, and by extension, him. Their movements were deliberate tests, measures of reaction, patience, and awareness. The bear had recognized this immediately and acted accordingly. Then a sudden movement, a leaf rustling sharply, broke the tension. The largest silhouette lunged briefly, not at him, but toward a fallen log, snapping a branch with the force of its movement. The bear growled sharply, stepping closer, placing itself fully between him and the unknown predator. He felt a surge of awe and fear. The bear was fearless, not because danger did not exist, but because it understood the rules and boundaries of this encounter. A moment of silence followed, thick and heavy. The silhouettes paused, evaluating the bear's stance, its protective positioning, and his reaction. The man's pulse thundered in his ears. He could feel the intelligence in their gaze, the deliberation in their movements, and the forest itself seemed to hum with tension. Then the bear did something remarkable. It stepped slightly forward, low and deliberate, chest brushing against him in a protective gesture. Its growl softened, becoming a rhythmic, almost communicative vibration. The man realized the bear was negotiating, using presence and instinct as language. The silhouettes paused, then shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, acknowledging the bear's authority in the moment. The man's chest tightened, understanding that the bear had not fled before because of fear alone. It had recognized intelligence, experience, and dominance in the unseen predators. It had assessed the threat, calculated risk, and acted to protect him while maintaining respect for the hierarchy at play. He felt a deep, almost reverent connection to the bear, a bridge between him and a world he could barely comprehend. As the mist swirled around them, the largest silhouette took one deliberate step closer. The bear growled softly, and the man realized with a mix of awe and dread that the encounter was about to escalate further, and his trust in the bear would be the only thing keeping him alive. The mist hung thick and suffocating, curling around the trees and blanketing the forest floor. The man's flashlight quivered in his hands, casting erratic beams that illuminated only fragments of the massive silhouettes. The bear remained pressed against him, a living anchor amid the tension. Its low growl vibrated through the damp air, a sound both protective and instructive. Every instinct screamed caution, yet the bear's presence offered a fragile sense of guidance. He realized, with growing clarity, that survival no longer depended solely on his actions. The bear was teaching him, communicating in ways beyond human comprehension. Its nudges, subtle shifts, and soft growls had become an unspoken language, a code he was learning to read in real time. He moved cautiously, mimicking the bear's steps, keeping low, silent, and deliberate. Every movement mattered. Ahead, the massive silhouettes paused, observing, assessing. They did not advance aggressively, but their presence was a constant reminder of the intelligence and dominance they wielded. The man's chest tightened. He understood that the forest itself had become a test, the bear a guide, and the silhouettes both challenge and measure. Each step forward required attention, patience, and trust in the bear's instincts. A gust of wind carried the musky scent of predator and earth. The bear pressed slightly closer, brushing his side with reassuring weight. He realized that the bear's protective instinct extended beyond mere defense. It was a strategic shield, guiding him safely through the unseen dangers. The silhouettes moved with deliberate care, maintaining distance yet demonstrating awareness of both him and the bear. The forest seemed to pulse with silent energy, alive with the rules of survival he had never known. He followed the bear's subtle cues, stepping around roots, shifting behind trees, and keeping flashlight steady. The bear led him along a path partially concealed by mist, avoiding the direct line of sight of the silhouettes. Each move was calculated, a silent negotiation between predator, protector, and human. He felt awe and humility. This was not just survival, it was a lesson in respect, instinct, and harmony within the wild. The largest silhouette shifted, making a soft, deliberate movement toward the ridge. The bear's growl vibrated, low and rhythmic, as if communicating, observe, do not provoke. The man froze, understanding the gravity of this moment. Every instinct in his body screamed fear, yet the bear's calm authority overrode panic. He had to trust, to follow, to respect the boundaries set by intelligence older and sharper than his own. Another rustle in the underbrush caused him to pause. The bear pressed closer, soft nudge against his leg, reassuring him while maintaining its protective posture. He realized that the bear's fear from earlier had transformed into strategy. It had assessed the threat, understood the hierarchy, and now guided him with the precision of a teacher and the loyalty of a guardian. The silhouettes moved subtly, circling without aggression, communicating through posture and timing. The bear responded in kind, low growls and shifts in stance creating a delicate balance of power and understanding. The man followed, crouched low, flashlight steady, heart racing yet tempered by trust in his companion. He was learning a language of instinct and awareness that transcended words. Suddenly, a narrow path appeared between two dense thickets. The bear paused, ears flicking, eyes scanning the mist. The man understood immediately, this was their opportunity. He followed the bear as it led the way, moving silently yet with purpose. The massive silhouettes remained at a distance, observing but not pursuing. It was a delicate truce, established through awareness and respect. Step by careful step, they navigated the terrain. The bear occasionally glanced back, nudging him forward, soft growls signaling caution, awareness, and encouragement. The man's chest tightened with gratitude and awe. He realized the depth of their bond, formed not through words but through shared survival, trust, and instinctual communication. Every step reinforced the understanding that the bear was not just an animal but a mentor, protector, and guide through the unknown. The forest began to thin as they moved toward a gentler slope. The silhouettes lingered at the edge of the mist, massive forms partially visible, eyes glimmering with intelligence and calculation. The man understood they were not threats anymore, but watchers, acknowledging the bear's authority and his respectful presence. The tension eased slightly, replaced by a fragile sense of accomplishment and reverence. Finally, they reached a clearing, the mist lifting enough to reveal the open sky. The bear paused, chest heaving, eyes scanning the remaining shadows. The silhouettes remained at the edge of the forest, massive, alert, and aware, but they did not advance. The bear nudged him gently, almost in a congratulatory gesture, signaling that the immediate danger had passed. The man exhaled deeply, feeling the adrenaline ebb as he absorbed the enormity of what had transpired. He crouched beside the bear, placing a hand on its thick fur. The connection between them was undeniable, a bond forged in fear, trust, and shared understanding. The forest had tested them, the silhouettes had challenged them, and the bear had guided him through the crucible. The silhouettes finally began to retreat, slipping silently back into the mist, their presence a lingering reminder of the intelligence and dominance of the forest's true rulers. The bear watched them disappear, ears twitching, then turned its gaze back to the man. It nudged him once more, softer this time, a gesture of reassurance and recognition. The man knelt beside the bear, heart still racing, and whispered, "Thank you." The bear pressed its head gently against his shoulder, growling softly, a sound filled with warmth, loyalty, and quiet pride. He realized the forest had not only tested him but had taught him humility, respect, and the depth of connection possible between human and animal. The mist lifted further, revealing the beauty of the wilderness around them. Trees stretched toward the sky, the river beyond glimmered in moonlight, and the forest hummed with life. The man felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the bear's guidance and courage. He had entered the forest alone, fearful, unprepared, and uncertain. Now, he emerged with understanding, respect, and a bond that transcended species. Even as the silhouettes disappeared into the mist, the man felt their eyes lingering, intelligent and calculating. He glanced at the bear, and in that shared moment of understanding, realized that this encounter had changed both of them forever, and that the forest still held secrets he had only begun to comprehend. The forest had shifted around him, transforming from a realm of shadows and fear to one of quiet reflection and awe. Mist still clung to the trees, curling around gnarled roots and moss-covered rocks, but the oppressive weight of unknown predators had eased, replaced by the rhythmic presence of the bear at his side. He knelt for a moment, letting the adrenaline fade, hand brushing against the bear's thick fur. Each heartbeat resonated with gratitude, trust, and the realization that this bond had been forged in extreme circumstances. Pressure, danger, and instinct had intertwined their fates. The silhouettes had vanished into the deeper mist, but their presence lingered in his mind. Their intelligence, coordination, and quiet dominance left a mark, a sense of respect and awe he could not shake. He knew the forest held secrets, rules, and hierarchies far beyond human understanding, and the bear had been his interpreter, guide, and guardian. He had entered unprepared, but through fear and observation, he had learned humility, awareness, and the depth of connection possible across species. The bear shifted closer, pressing its head gently against his shoulder, warm and solid. He felt a shiver of relief and awe. The creature's low, rhythmic growls seemed to convey reassurance, pride, and an unspoken acknowledgement of their shared endurance. The man whispered softly, almost reverently, "We made it, thanks to you." The bear responded with a soft, rumbling nuzzle, as if accepting gratitude while reminding him that survival was never about ego, it was about observation, respect, and instinctual understanding. He rose slowly, eyes sweeping across the clearing. Moonlight illuminated the mist as it began to dissipate, revealing the natural beauty of the forest he had only glimpsed through fear. Trees stretched skyward, river water shimmered with gentle reflections, and the forest floor seemed alive with subtle movements, small creatures stirring, leaves rustling softly. He realized that the forest had always been vibrant, dynamic, and alive, but it was only through the crucible of danger that he had truly seen it, understood it, and respected it. The bear remained at his side, ears twitching, eyes scanning the shadows even as the silhouettes retreated. Its presence reminded him that vigilance was a natural part of life in the wilderness. The bear's guidance had been deliberate and precise, teaching him to interpret subtle cues, prioritize awareness, and trust instincts over reaction. Every movement, every pause, every soft growl had been a lesson in survival and connection. As he walked slowly through the clearing, following the bear, he felt a profound shift in perception. The forest was no longer a backdrop of fear, it was a living ecosystem, intricate and balanced, with hierarchies, intelligence, and unspoken rules. The bear had been his translator, guiding him through the invisible threads of instinct, respect, and strategy that governed the wilderness. He felt gratitude beyond words, a bond that transcended language, species, and fear. A distant rustle made him glance toward the edge of the forest. The silhouettes were gone, yet the memory of their intelligence lingered. Their eyes had glimmered with purpose, intent, and an almost human awareness. He realized that while danger had receded, the forest was alive with observation and hierarchy beyond comprehension. The bear's calm demeanor reminded him that understanding and respect were as critical to survival as courage and action. He crouched to examine the ground, noting claw marks, footprints, and signs left behind by the silhouettes. Each mark told a story of intelligence, coordination, and survival strategies. The bear pressed its head against his hand, as if reinforcing the lesson. Observation and interpretation were vital. He nodded slowly, acknowledging the depth of what he had witnessed. The forest was a teacher, the bear a guide, and he, a student humbled by experience. The man's mind wandered back to the moments of fear, the adrenaline that had driven each cautious step, and the instinctual connection with the bear. He understood that survival was not about domination, it was about awareness, respect, and the willingness to learn from forces larger and older than himself. The bear's protective presence had bridged the gap between instinct and intellect, fear and understanding, chaos and order. As the night deepened, a soft breeze carried the scents of the forest, earth, moss, water, and the lingering musk of predators. He inhaled deeply, feeling grounded yet aware of the fragile balance that existed in the wilderness. Every movement mattered, every sound carried meaning, and every creature, including himself, was part of an intricate web of awareness, survival, and hierarchy. He looked down at the bear, whose eyes gleamed with quiet intelligence, and whispered, "We survived, together." The bear responded with a soft, rumbling nuzzle, acknowledging their shared experience and the unspoken trust that had formed between them. The man realized that the bond forged in the crucible of fear and instinct was unbreakable, a connection born of respect, survival, and mutual understanding. The forest around them seemed to settle, the mist thinning, moonlight glinting off leaves and river water. Yet in the distance, the lingering presence of the silhouettes reminded him that the wilderness held secrets beyond comprehension, forces both intelligent and unseen. The bear's calm vigilance reinforced the lesson: respect, awareness, and connection were the keys to navigating a world that humans could never fully control. As he prepared to leave the clearing, the bear paused, ears twitching, eyes fixed on the misty ridge. The man realized that while this encounter had ended, the forest's mysteries were far from resolved, and that the bond between them was only the beginning of understanding the wilderness and the intelligence that resided within it. The first hints of dawn brushed the sky with pale gold, softening the forest's dark edges. The mist that had cloaked the trees overnight now thinned into delicate wisps, revealing the intricate beauty of the wilderness he had barely comprehended the night before. The man stood, stretching stiff muscles, hand brushing gently against the bear's thick, warm fur. Every heartbeat carried gratitude, awe, and a quiet reverence for the creature that had guided him through fear and uncertainty. The bear pressed its head briefly against his shoulder, a gesture of acknowledgement, reassurance, and trust. He realized in that moment that their bond was no longer defined by survival alone. It had become something deeper, a connection forged in instinct, fear, observation, and mutual respect. The forest, which had felt oppressive and alien just hours before, now pulsed with life, rhythm, and intelligence that he could observe and appreciate in fragments, thanks to the bear's guidance. He scanned the clearing, noting the subtle signs left behind by the massive silhouettes that had tested them. Their eyes, glimmering with intelligence in the mist, had remained in his memory, a reminder of forces both powerful and unseen. The bear had navigated this delicate hierarchy with precision, balancing protection and respect, teaching him through presence rather than instruction. It had been the bridge between human understanding and the forest's ancient intelligence. The man took a slow, deep breath, allowing the serenity of the early morning to wash over him. He felt humbled, not by fear alone, but by awareness. Every instinct, every movement, and every heartbeat had mattered. The bear's guidance had taught him patience, observation, and the subtle art of communication beyond words. He understood now that survival in the wilderness was less about confrontation and more about connection with the forest, its inhabitants, and the unseen rules that governed life. A gentle breeze carried the scent of pine, moss, and river water. The man closed his eyes briefly, feeling the quiet pulse of the forest. The bear remained alert beside him, ears twitching at distant sounds, muscles coiled yet calm. He realized that while their immediate danger had passed, vigilance and respect were ongoing necessities. This was not a story of conquest or mastery, it was a story of learning, trust, and harmony. As the sunlight began to filter through the thinning mist, highlighting the rugged terrain and river beyond, the man knelt beside the bear, placing both hands on its massive shoulders. The bear lowered its head, allowing the touch, its eyes soft yet aware. He whispered, almost reverently, "I don't think I could have done this without you." The bear responded with a soft, rumbling nuzzle, a sound that seemed to convey acknowledgement, pride, and quiet affirmation of their shared journey. The forest around them stirred. Small creatures emerged, birds began their morning chorus, and the river sparkled in golden light. Yet even in this tranquil scene, he could feel the lingering presence of intelligence in the shadows. The silhouettes that had observed, evaluated, and retreated. He understood that the wilderness was filled with forces beyond his comprehension, but that fear could coexist with respect, learning, and trust. He rose slowly, scanning the clearing one last time. The bear followed, shadow and companion in unison. The lessons of the night, the patience, observation, instinct, and silent communication, were now etched into his understanding. Survival had been the immediate goal, but comprehension, respect, and empathy had become the true rewards. He felt a deep, abiding gratitude for the bear's guidance, which had transformed fear into knowledge, chaos into awareness, and survival into connection. A distant rustle reminded him of the forest's enduring mysteries. The silhouettes were gone, yet their intelligence and presence lingered in memory and perception. He felt a quiet thrill, an understanding that the forest was alive, deliberate, and full of lessons for those willing to observe. The bear's protective vigilance had been the bridge to that understanding, and their bond had been forged in the crucible of fear, instinct, and trust. He paused at the edge of the clearing, hand resting on the bear's thick fur, gazing toward the ridge where the silhouettes had first appeared. Their eyes had lingered in memory, glimmering with intelligence and intent. He realized that while the immediate danger had passed, the forest's lessons would remain with him forever. Every rustle, every shadow, every subtle movement carried meaning, and he now knew how to read it with humility and awareness. The bear nudged him gently, urging him forward. He took a step, then another, moving slowly and deliberately through the forest, aware of every sound, every shift of light, every subtle presence. He understood that the journey was not just physical but emotional, a merging of instinct, observation, and trust. The bond between human and animal had become a bridge to understanding a wilderness alive with intelligence and hierarchy, beyond comprehension. As they reached a familiar path leading towards safety, he looked down at the bear, eyes meeting its calm, intelligent gaze. He whispered, "Thank you for everything." The bear pressed its head against his side one final time, growling softly, a sound full of affirmation, reassurance, and shared triumph. The man felt a profound sense of closure, awe, and connection, a recognition that survival and understanding were inseparable, and that trust, observation, and empathy were the keys to navigating a world larger and wiser than himself. Even as the sunlight strengthened and the forest seemed peaceful, he could not shake the memory of the intelligent silhouettes. The bear's calm presence reminded him that the wilderness was vast, deliberate, and full of unseen knowledge. He realized their bond was only the beginning, and that every encounter in the wild would now be measured not just by fear, but by trust, awareness, and respect.